Okay, so as I explained, Spider-Man's entire reason for letting that thug go is just because not his problem. Not because, oh hey, you cheated me out of money, or oh hey, you purposely gave me a hassle and whatever. No, no, it had nothing to do with that. It was entirely because, oh shock and awe, not my problem. It's the cops' job, and if they can't do their job, then maybe we need new cops. That kind of mentality. And he just walked off. That was it. Not turnabout his spare plane, not. And it wasn't until he got back home and he finds out Ben has been shot and they're chasing the killer and they got him cornered and he goes to where he is. Almost beats the guy. It beats the guy pretty badly too. In Spider-Man Chapter 1, which, like I said, I really love because they integrated into being a part of the series so well. He actually almost beats him within an inch of his life. He has to stop himself because he flew into a rage. And then he recognizes the guy and realizes this is the guy that I let go because it wasn't my problem. Not, oh, it wasn't worth letting him go for this, or it wasn't worth letting him go for that. This is the guy that I decided wasn't my problem because I wasn't involved. And he killed my uncle. And also kind of explains why he's very much struggling in the early issues with, why am I doing this? People don't appreciate me. They think I'm just as bad as the people I'm trying to stop. Why do I bother? It's a very much transitional thing from who he used to be to who he becomes. This is why when I see people talking about Peter Parker as this altruistic, sweet little chemistry whiz that becomes everything he's not when he puts on the suit. No, Peter Parker was not a sweet little boy. He was a quote-unquote good kid in that he didn't get into trouble. And he was picked on, yes, but he wasn't a good kid. Not like that. He was a normal kid. Who had a normal kid attitude, which was, frankly, somewhat selfish. Kids do have a selfish streak. Peter was no exception. And that does bother me about, even the new one a little bit, but that's just something that bothers me when people try to say that Peter Parker never had an attitude problem. He did. Very much so before that happened. Now, I want to move on to the villains because that's something that really gets to me too. And I'm going to start with obviously, you'd think I'd want to start with the Green Goblin, but I'm going to save that. No. I want to start with Sandman because Sandman arguably could be considered the least offending, even though it's a big change, and here's why. Flynn Marko never really had too much going for him in terms of personality in a villain sense. He did, but he didn't, and he's also sort of unmemorable in the sense that you can kind of forgive screwing with him a bit. But if you want to talk in terms of accuracy, Flint Marko was a criminal. Not by necessity, by choice. He loved it. Okay, he loved being a crook. It was a thrill. It was a real, ride for him. He enjoyed it. And, he's the kind of guy who'd literally be laughing while he, fired back at the cops who were chasing him. He was that kind of criminal. And when he finally got caught and tried to bust out of prison, wound up getting nuked. And, there's molecules emerged with the sand. Yeah. Now, in a way, I kind of like how they made it more like a sonic merging to a degree. because I can kind of see where you might think in the realm of completely pulled out of your butt fake science that would work. I mean, I think it was supposed to be like an atom smasher, even someone said. Um, what have you. So I can understand why people might think that might work a little more than it's just a nuclear blast, even though it's, neither one's really realistic. But at the same time, just his attitude, and they throw in this whole sad backstory of a sick daughter, and that's why I did this. And then they make him Uncle Ben's real killer, and then it's an accident, and that kind of ruins everything that came before. The whole, I let my uncle's killer get away. Even if he had stopped that guy, there's a chance if the guy had gotten spooked that he would have shot Uncle Ben. So, even if he had been responsible and stopped the guy, there's no guarantee Ben would have walked away from that all right. And it also, in a sense, makes him a murderer, because that's another thing I did not like. He more or less, even if indirectly, killed the guy that killed Uncle Ben. Or he thought killed Uncle Ben. So now the guy died for nothing. He was actually innocent of the crime that he thought he had committed. But you kind of take away from the whole great responsibility thing. I mean, what was the point now? But again, we're talking about Flynn Marco, and Marco, just making him a sympathetic villain. No, just I mean, it's okay, I suppose. It rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, especially since if they had just made him like he was, in the comics. Just a superpowered thug. Definitely gives you more room to work with in developing Harry Osborn and the whole second Green Goblin thing. Definitely gives you more room to work with, Venom. And yeah, I know we're gonna, someone's gonna be like, oh, he didn't want Venom. I'm gonna say this once. Technically speaking, Sony Entertainment actually only wanted the symbiote thrown in there. They didn't want Venom thrown in there. They actually wanted Venom set up for a potential sequel. The scene with the symbiote going all over Eddie Brock in the church. It was actually supposed to end there. That was supposed to be the last you saw of the symbiote or Eddie. It was supposed to be a quote-unquote unresolved point for the fourth movie. It was going to be teased at the end of the movie as being, apparently they wanted something like, Venom without actually being revealed as Venom watching Peter at the end of the movie or something like that. But Sam Raimi did not like Venom. Sam Raimi thought that he didn't want to do a whole movie with Venom. Sam Raimi went on record as saying he was never a fan of Venom and thought that he lacked humanity. Said he wasn't really a fan of villains without a face in general because they didn't really have any humanity, but whatever. And so, crammed him in there at the last minute and killed him off quick. Which really does not excuse what he does to Eddie Brock either. What happens in the movie with Eddie Brock, obviously, we all know it. Eddie Brock, story about Spider-Man, oh, Spider-Man's a criminal, I'm going to prove it. Fakes a photo. Peter rather maliciously proves him to be a liar and ruins his career, and he goes into the church to pray for God to kill Spider-Man. Can you work to make anyone more of an unlikable douche? Well, yes, you can. You can give him the dialogue and persona that you give Eddie Brock in this movie. Besides the point, though. And I've actually seen people try to say that he made this Eddie Brock more human and you actually feel bad for him. How do you feel bad for the man who is responsible for his own? He lied. He lied and he cheated. And he got what was coming to him. How do you feel bad for people who get their comeuppance from their own dishonesty? I don't understand that. But let's compare that to the Eddie Brock from the comics, shall we? Eddie Brock was a big guy, very athletic, also very intelligent, but very athletic. He came from a Roman Catholic family. He was a deeply religious man. His mother died due to complications during childbirth. He never really got to know his mother. His father became, while not necessarily cruel, became pretty cold and distant from him. And even though he tried very hard to excel at both athletics and academics to please his father, and he was a good student and a good athlete, he still couldn't quite get the attention he wanted. Anyways, he goes on to college, gets a career, decides to major in journalism after reading an article on the Watergate scandal. Now, contrary to popular belief, this doesn't quite date it quite as much as you'd think. Because, just because you're fascinated by a piece of journalism doesn't necessarily mean that, it dates you as having good men from that time period. You could have read it in an archive. But regardless, he reads some journalistic work. He decides he wants to major in journalism because of a journalist. He was actually doing a fairly good job. He was investigating a serial killer called the Sin Eater. Gets this phone call from a guy confessing to being the Sin Eater, who had quite a bit of knowledge about the guy. So it seemed like it could be legit. But he was also under a lot of pressure from his boss to reveal, to come up with this guy's identity. So he figured, okay, he knows a lot about the guy. He's confessing, probably him. So he goes ahead and he publishes it. It's a mistake. It is. Because Spider-Man completely unintentionally captures the Sin Eater and reveals that he's someone else. And then Eddie Brock finds out that the guy that he published as the killer is a compulsive confessor who confesses to crimes that he didn't even commit. And so Eddie's fired and his career is over. His wife files for divorce. The entire reason he goes into that church that night to pray is to pray for forgiveness because he is seriously contemplating suicide. Okay? Suicide. And he's so torn up about this from a personal and a religious aspect. And that's when that symbiote joins with him. That's when it amplifies his dislike for Spider-Man. He definitely wasn't a Spider-Man fan because in a way he did blame him for that. The symbiote even amplified that with its own hatred. Gave him, his powers, his, knowledge of Spider-Man's identity, so on and so forth. He becomes Venom. And, just everyone keeps complaining about Venom, though, purely from his look and the way he is after he gets the suit. Never before, rarely before do I see anyone criticize the way they portrayed Eddie Brock pre-suit. Aside from the fact that he's like way too scrawny or something, It's actually a very wonderfully complex character and a very sad tale. And they just kind of, tossed it out, and no one seems to care about that. It's all about the big, black, giant-tongued, venom-spewing monster. That's all that people seem to care about. That frustrates me to no end, but there you have it. Next, we're going to talk about Doc Ock.